Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge, brought to you by SAYWHAT, supported by SEAL, Sawira Events and Lifestyle, courtesy of the Nyaradzo Group. At the end of the day, we always need to think about the future, who we are, where we stand, and what we desire to build. That's exactly why we've come here today, to debate issues of contention and stand for our rights as intellectual youths. We have youth from all across the nation, from various institutions, standing for advocacy and being a voice for the voiceless. So, who do I have the pleasure of introducing today? We'll get into that, but for now, I want to introduce myself. And today I will be your debate master. Let's just say you can call me Master Jumbe. So, from podium number 1, who do we have the honor of being with today?
My name is Gift Kunesi, and I am representing Catholic University.
I'm Dorcas Nomsa Chirango. I'm representing Catholic University of Zimbabwe.
And on podium number 2, who do we have joining us today?
I'm Tanaso Magwaza. I'm from Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences.
I'm Saluana Shekanyemba.
That's lovely. And on podium number 3, who do we have?
I'm Nestle Makado from Zimbabwe ZEGU University, and this is Nyasha Lincoln Teacher Wangana.
Great. And on podium number 4, who do we have the honor of being with?
I'm Atherton Chipinduro from Chino University of Technology.
I'm Ropa Fadzomazarire from the Chino University of Technology.
Thank you very much, honorable students, for now. Well, when it comes to these areas, it would be an absolute travesty if, as your debate master, I was not here to contextualize you and illuminate some dark areas concerning today's debate. So, today's debate will participate in a British parliamentary style. It will consist of 4 teams. 2 teams will be proposing the motion, and the other 2 teams will be opposing it. This will always consist of something very specific. We want all of the team members to understand that they have an allocated 4 minutes of speaking time that they must use wisely to their perfection, and that they only have 15 seconds of their POIs to be raised. With that being said, let's get into the motion of today's debate. The motion reads as follows. This House believes that youth quotas in Parliament are tokenistic and undermine meaningful youth engagement in governance. This House believes that youth quotas in Parliament are tokenistic and undermine meaningful youth engagement in governance. At this point in time, the motion has been read. The teams have been acquainted. Do you believe that Parliament having a few youth quotas is truly indicative of their urgency towards youth-centered issues? Or it's just to keep the youth a bit silent? Well, it's time for us to find out. And you know what time it is. It's time for us to seal the deal. Well, I told them that they were just honorable students before. However, at this current point in time, they are now going to transform into delegates and respectable speakers. I will now call upon the first speaker of today's debate. Honorable Prime Minister, may you please come forward and stand for your case.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this debate. I, as the Prime Minister, will be supporting the motion that reads, this House believes that youth quotas in Parliament are tokenistic and undermine meaningful youth engagement in governance. As the first speaker and the Prime Minister, I'm going to start by defining terms, key terms. So our first key term is youth quotas. What are youth quotas? These are segments designated for young people or the youths in parliament. So we are saying the youth quotas are where the youths meet in the parliament, are where is the area where it is designated for the youth or young people to meet in parliament. And also the second keyword is tokenistic. So tokenistic, according to what I've researched, mean that no valuable, which means they have no value. Rather, they have any other use, but not valuable. And the next keyword is undermine meaningful youth engagement. Undermine meaningful youth engagement. This means that meaningful youth discussions or even meetings are undervalued. And that's what I have for the key terms. So this House believes that youth quotas in parliament are tokenistic and undermine meaningful youth engagement in government. As the Prime Minister, I believe I support this motion because I think the youth quotas are put in the parliament so that the youths can be kept besides the parliament or besides the elders, not that they're valuable or they are interested in solving youth problems. So I think the youth quotas in parliament are tokenistic because they put the youth not to solve the issues that affect the youth, but so that other youths will just know that in the parliament, there are people who represent us, but are they representing us on the ground? No, they are not. These people are too young and their conversations are rather flamboyant than meaningful. And I'm sure even the elders target such people. Also, lack of knowledge and experience makes the youth in parliament tokenistic and even undermined meaningful youth engagement. So, ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, the motion stands. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. I will now call upon the first leader of the opposing delegation to come forward and make their case heard.
Okay, so panel, the government have come here and they've outlined to us why they feel like these quotas are just tokenistic, right? But they've also mentioned the issue of the youth not being efficient in parliament due to the fact that they are young, they do not have knowledge, and they do not have experience. But we as the opposition believe that these youths are the ones who have the perfect experience that can lead to change because they understand exactly the things that are affecting the youth. Having said that, right, we come to you and we say, what does our side of the house look like? It looks like a house that acknowledges that we have a system in place that is very problematic, right? So what do we want to do about this system? We want to change the system that is causing problems in let's say, for example, in Zimbabwe, right? But then how are we going to do that? The youth are the ones who we believe know and experience these things hands-on because they are the future of tomorrow, right? So then what does that mean? That means that we have the youth wanting change, right? But they may not have the actual platform for them to be able to do this, right? So then the question is, how do we go about it? How do we go about change as a country? How do we go about change as a nation, right? We go about change through going to those specific platforms that are able to give us the power in the room to speak our minds and to be able to make change, right? We believe that the parliament, for example, is that such place, right? So now, we say that do these youth then just stay as protesters outside walking around with banners going, we want change, right? Do they go to the social media and just go about like the entire day talking about it? No. We think that real change happens in parliament. We think that real change happens within policy-making areas, right? And we think that this is the only shot that we have for those youth to be able to get into engagement with those above 60 people or whoever were able to bring that change to us, right? We talk about quotas, fight systems, exclusion, that grassroots activism alone cannot break, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about the issue that we bypass the gatekeepers when we are able to infiltrate the system from within, right? Let's say, for example, we have the issue of party rules, often demanding that someone should have like 20 years of membership, right? So that in turn effectively shuts down anyone who is under 35 from actively participating in change, right? But then with quotas, we are saying we can be able to give those youth the platform for them to now be able to come in and be able to speak their mind and be able to bring change, right? We think that there's the issue of unequal resources where the ruling elites control state funds, right? And then the security forces, but then the movements that, for example, like Chajamuka, right? Despite this, their passion, they got crushed without some form of institutional leverage because they felt like they did not really take this formally. But when we now have youth who are inside the parliament, when we have youth who are now in a professional platform for them to be able to talk about this and be heard, we feel like they can be more efficient in bringing about change, right? So we believe that they can come here and ask the question of, the anticipated claim is that generally quotas reduce or they're used to tokenism, right? But we have evidence to say that African barometer data shows that youth in parliament actually rose the trust in parliament by 31% in Ghana after quotas were introduced. So basically we feel like tokenism is not really, okay, let's say, we say as a house that it is better for us to find the only gate pass or to find the only way that we can actually infiltrate a system and use that. Because apart from that, we are only going to have a youth that's going to be walking around talking about how they're having problems, but they're not really able to change those problems because they're not given that platform. And we think that if they get quotas to get into parliament, they can definitely do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the side of the opposition. I will now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to provide more light concerning today's topics. Please come forward.
Good day, members of the House. I stand before you as a Deputy Prime Minister to emphasize on how tokenistic the youth quota parliament, the youth quotas in the parliament are of little effect in this policy. So youth have little knowledge in the industry of how the government is run. They are still learning, and their positions as youth have very little impact on changes. So they can only identify and provide solutions. They do not really provide change. They can only identify. Their positions are they're pseudo players in this industry of the government. They still need to grow. Their minds are still young, and if we are to let them run the government, they'll focus on enjoyment and other flamboyant activities, but not of sustainable and effective change. honorable member talked about the fact that they are not efficient. They are efficient. They are not efficient because they take time arguing instead of like the elders in the parliament, in the government. They have been through most of these challenges and they come up with solutions faster than the youth. So we do not, we prove our point that their positions are tokenistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. I will now call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition Party to provide us with an understanding concerning their perspectives on this case. Please, may you come forward.
The contest chair. Zimbabwean youth have been tired of being outside, waiting and looking through the windows, not completely getting into power. We are tired of our voices being ignored. Quotas are not just a perfect solution, but they are the vital entry, a strategic breakhead in the fight for our future. We will not be content with just protesting at the gates. We will use every tool that is available for us to bring the change that is necessary. Why do we believe so? Zimbabwe is a population, 60% of the population of Zimbabwe comprises of the young people. Now, the government is coming to tell us that young people, they are full of ideas, but they are not going to bring change. The reason being why, we think it's because of how society have been considering them previously in terms of their power. They've not been getting into power. Now that these people are getting power, they're getting opportunity to get into power, then this means their voices are amplified. For example, when they're in parliament, people get to listen to them more. Not only people in Zimbabwe, but even people that are outside the country. They get to feel their voices and they get to recognize their own needs. We think this is something which is very important in this debate. Now, the second thing that we're going to tell you is how quotas deliver real results, whereas we think since they contribute 60% of the young population, 60% of the population in Zimbabwe, they are the majority and their voices need to be heard in parliament, right? The government have not shown us what tokenism actually looks like, and they've not shown us what they believe tokenism is about, right? We think that just one MP in parliament can bring change in terms of policies rather than 10,000 people who are outside protesting. We think these issues, when they're dealt in a legislative way in parliament, we are likely to bring more change. Now, quotas, MPs, they sit on parliamentary committees, giving them the power to question government ministers. When they tend to interact with those that are in power, they want to they bring questions of accountability and making sure that everything is questioned. We come and tell you that in Zimbabwe in 2023, young MPs, they forced an audit which led to recovery of funds that have been misallocated. We think this is something which is very important in this debate, because the very reason why we're debating is because we're trying to change the lives of people. How? By making sure that those that truly know the problems that people are facing are in a position of power, and they're in a position to question accountability, which is something that we think is very vital in this debate. The other thing that we would want to engage more on is how quotas, they are the grassroots engagement without influence outside parliament, often leads to small fragmented changes. Quotas, however, they give youth the legislative power that they need. The other issue which is very important is how patriarchy has already allocated itself. Systems are already in places. And we think for us just to fight just to fight outside is not something which is very important. We think we need to get within the system in a position whereby we can literally understand what's going on and we can fully comprehend where we need to improve as youth. We come and tell you that in parties, there are policies that are there that are just to undermine the youth so that they are not be able to get into parliament. But with the quota system now, it forces those that are in power to take action. We believe that quota is a route and a foot for us to open doors in this debate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. When it comes to youth advocacy, it's not just a matter of giving some teenagers a few t-shirts and blazers, but it's a matter of understanding how we must capacitate them to achieve their dreams. How can we ask them to build a future if we do not lay the necessary foundation for their passion and capacity? This is a season of breakthrough. We are here to stop. We are here to say it ends now. Youth advocacy is no longer going to be a dream that we have, but a reality that we now live. And we'll have much more of that right after the break. See you soon after the break. Welcome back to the SASI Debate Challenge. We are now in the second leg of our debate. The first half brought up quite some interesting ideas. However, in this half, we're going to be developing them with even more fervor and vehemence. Hopefully, a bit more passion will come into these areas. When it comes to tokenism, it's a matter of asking, do they really matter or they do truly matter? So now, I will ask the member of government to come forward and present their cases.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in support of the motion. The House believes that youth quotas in Parliament are tokenistic and undermine meaningful youth engagement in governance. So I'm going to first begin by defining tokenistic. Tokenistic is a point where these youths are being paid off to do something that they would have done to just make a change in a community. And also, undermining meaningful youth engagement is depriving them to showcase what they can do other than just being pushed forward through payment to do something. This discussion surrounds youth power in the age of disruption, highlighting the complexity of advocacy, representation, and engagement. Balancing digital visibility, action-oriented advocacy, and meaningful governance engagement is essential for fostering transformative youth leadership in 2025 and beyond. Basically, we get to a point where we view these youths as putting a decorative plant in a room where it looks nice but doesn't contribute to the environment meaningfully. What are we saying? These youths represent the other voices in the parliament, but to a certain extent, we need to view how they are placed in a position without power, without real power. Their representation or presence may be more symbolic than substantive, leading to disillusionment. There is issue of dilution of influence. They rely on quotas. Their reliance on quotas may divert attention from fostering genuine youth-led movements and advocacy, since they'll be told what not to do and what to do, which is like taming them to do what they already are doing, as in the older people. The next thing we need to view is that there is less involvement in policy making. where they will be undermined to give any of their own ideas, but are guided on what to say and what not to say. I would like to view some of the points that were given by my fellow opposition party, the aspect of efficiency. We begin to question what are they lacking, and what comes to view is they aren't given the room to showcase their capacity. They changed that, they were saying that isn't there. It comes with giving them a shot to showcase the view they have. They have the fresh ideas and fresh policies to give, but they don't have the ability or the room to do so. So I pose to the opposition side, how are voices amplified when 60%, they said, the larger percentage of 58.99% roughly is out there struggling or in drugs with no assistance or voice being heard. By so doing, as the opening government, the closing government, we are of the view that the youth quotas in parliament are tokenistic and undermined in their engagement towards the governance. With this, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I will now call upon a member of the opposition to provide their perspective on this motion. Please come forward.
Panel, we think that it is unfair for the entire government bench to rate the effectiveness of youth quotas based off of the fact that do they have real power or not in terms of influencing what happens within parliament. We think that they rate them on things, but they fail to understand that their presence is deeply embedded in deep systematic oppression. And we want to show you how this systematic oppression is taken care of, or rather destroyed, when we have a foot in the room rather than absence entirely, right? So first of all, we want to acknowledge that youth quotas are not perfect, right? But we think that it is a critical first step to addressing or correcting generational exclusion that we see from years. We think that they provide visibility, they provide experience and institutional access, which are necessary for long-term youth empowerment, right? And we think that when we don't have quotas, right, which is mostly our extension. We think that when we don't have quotas, we don't then have room to have real power, or we don't then have room for young people to then make real influence within that system. We think that quotas are the first step, and we will show you how, right? First of all, we think that visibility changes social norms, and some of the real problems that we are facing in today's debate is just social norms. Social norms about young people, social norms about their capabilities, social norms about what they are able to do, right? We see ageism a lot within the system, right? Because it is oppressive and has been for so many years before, right? And we think that when we have young people come into parliament, youth MPs breaking stereotypes about capabilities, when young people see Honorable Ngadzore probably doing or changing some things within community or raising issues that young people who are the stakeholders, young women, disabled youth, who other people within parliament may not be able to relate to, we think that this is viable, and we think that it gives real power in the long run, right? We think that media and schools actually start treating young people as important stakeholders within the conversation of policy, within the conversations of lawmaking, within the conversation of governance. When they see young people actually getting So what happens? Do I just... Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we think that when youth basically see other young people in power, we think that that is something that creates traction, right? And traction is important in terms of getting youth involved in terms of governance, right? We think that traction is what gets youth involved, and we think that we get that benefit from youth quotas. So we don't necessarily see how they are tokenistic. Like today's burden, our burden rather, is to show you that tokenism, or what might be perceived as tokenism, has greater impact or greater social benefits rather than just it being tokenistic, right? We think that we value having that tokenism if it is going to give us greater outcomes in the future, right? So basically, we want to understand how we think that youth activism or genuine youth activism can coexist with youth quotas, right? We think that if we have young parliamentarians in youth quotas, they actually help exacerbate maybe the impact that activists do. This is something that gets touched on by the opening opposition, right? And we think that these two things can exist together. And we think that even funding for youth-led projects and civic space participation and protection is done better when we have youth parliamentarians within the system, right? When we have outsiders, when we're not in the system, when we don't have a say, or we're not even involved in any of the processes, we don't get some of these benefits that we see. So we think that those two things can always work hand in hand together. We think that youth quotas actually advance youth activism, right? So what you get from opposition is you get representation, you get legitimacy, and you get incremental access, right? Which is building on the generational shift in leadership. You get young people being trained, fully trained, for seeing what the system looks like so that they can be better future leaders. And we think that is important in today's debate. Thank you.
Eight speakers, but only 2 remain. Only 2 speakers will define the direction that this debate will take. So I'll now call upon the first individual who will lead us in this procession into hopefully victory or failure. May the government whip please come forward to stand for their case.
As the closing government, we would like to take note of the point that though it is a first step towards making the youth being heard, they have been given this chance over years, over and over. But what have they done over the years? Despite making noise in the parliament, singing THBT order, Nemasaskam. What is that in parliament? We want serious business. If we are to compare our parliament, our youth, with the Australian parliament, the Rwandan parliament that they mentioned, the youth take the job seriously. They are not after making noise. They are not after making baseless arguments. The youth in other countries, in other sectors that they have mentioned, they play a proactive role in policy making rather than a consultative role. This makes our youth, the youth in Zimbabwe, play a minor role, leading to them being of a tokenistic nature, right? Another thing to note, that in Zimbabwe we have been having the child parliament. What have they done? Only mimicking the president, wearing the scarf and smiling on the cameras, eating good food, going for conferences. Is that what we want in the parliament? Is that what we want as a people, as the youth? No. We want people who are willing to push a narrative, who are willing to push for climate sensitivity, sexual sensitivity, and among us other issues, right? Our youth are more active on social media rather than on the ground. They come on social media. We need new leaders. We need new leaders. We need new leaders. When they go to parliament, they are rather quiet. Maybe they are targeting cars. Maybe they are targeting other things. Is that what we want as the people? Is that what the people want? So, the government is basically saying that the youth have become more of dummies in the parliament. They are more of listeners, consultants, not even proactive members. So with this, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And I will now ask a request for the closing side of the opposition's whip to come forward and wrap up this debate for us. Thank you.
Panel, a foot in the door is better than none at all. That's the motion or the mantra that we've been running with in this debate. The realities of government traditionally are such that there is normalized phobia against young voices entering these spaces of governance. And we feel that placing this foot of normalizing or encouraging youth quotas in governance is a good first step towards more representation and incremental change. So government came with three major arguments in support of the motion, and the first being that youth is placed in these spaces just to rub shoulders with leadership, but not really changing, really effecting real change. And to that, we say that we reject this claim because youth actually participate in some issues effectively due to their own capacities and levels. You cannot expect them to get into the room, then start participating at the levels of seasoned political leaders, etc. They get to get this change incrementally, and this is why we feel that tokens are still useful in effecting real change. They also spoke about how where youth dwelled on why youth generally does not deserve a spot in governance, and they focus on entertainment, and they're immature and they're serious. And we feel that this is simply untrue, and we reject this claim because it undermines the youth movement and leadership. We say to this motion, youth quotas are a wedge into these rigid systems that historically did not give room for youth to participate or to give a voice. We feel that these quotas are a platform for youth to gain political capital and also a training ground for them to learn how to run the economy, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the future national leaders, right? So we feel that this is important. And why is this important? We feel if these youth, right, get to become our future leaders, by virtue of understanding why youth voices matter, right, they get to grant more and more rights and more power to youth. So in the long run, we get to have a youth that is more vibrant and more useful and effective in effecting real change in governance. We feel that ROPA came in extension and speaks about how quotas challenge social norms and how youth are viewed in Zimbabwe, right, and other global South countries, right. So we feel that generally we have as a society, we have this feeling that youth are not really effective or they're not capable of taking leadership positions, right? But when government takes initiative to include these youths in leadership positions, it challenges this view of what youth are perceived as, and it manifests also in corporate spaces where youth get to be given more leadership positions in administrative roles, and it also manifests in traditional spaces spaces where leadership is required, and in any other space where leadership is actually required. So we feel that this is much, much more important. We actually regret side government, which is in pursuit of purity at the expense of real change that is not only scalable, but that is realistic and can actually increase over time. What we give you as government is incremental representation and access that is brought about by these youth quotas, because we cannot expect youth to just break the door and come to participate in national government at the levels of maybe the president or seasoned politicians. But this change is incremental, and we see that inside opposition. So by this, we are proud to oppose.
Well, you've heard the speakers, and that finally concludes our debate. However, we will now allow for some time for deliberation from our adjudicators. So, stay tuned. We'll see you right after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the SASI Debate Challenge. Concerning the adjudicators, well, let's just call these deliberations a Kit Kat or a cheesecake, because let's just say they're going to be quite short and sweet. May the chief adjudicator please come forward and provide their remarks.
Happy New Year. On a more serious note, are we recording? Cool. Would like to thank all the debaters for participating in this debate and actively making it an interesting round. I would also like to thank the rest of the debaters that have been debating in the other rounds up until we got to this episode and to this round of this episode. To this round and to this episode. With that being said, would like to announce the results and wish you guys all the best moving forward in the tournament. So, with that being said, in fourth position, we have opening government. In third position, we have closing government. In second position, we have opening opposition. And in first, we have closing opposition. The debate was an interesting debate, and we hope that the skills that you guys have learned during this tournament, you either take on in the next round or you take on in the real world and advocate for real change in the communities you come from. With that, thank you so much and good luck on the break.
Well, I hope that you've had just as much fun as I have had on this debate. So, don't forget to stay tuned and say hashtag SASI at 8. Well, everything over here was absolutely brilliant. Thank you once again to the honorable delegates and debate participants, as well as our lovely team of panelists. This has been your debate master, Master Jumbe. See you next time. Goodbye.
I look up in the sky, God is my angel. I look up in the sky, God gonna save me. I've got a vision, so I gotta work on it. Nobody bring me down, so I gotta go, gotta go.
I got a dream. When you know you have a dream,